Why are there so many people who believe that the minimum wage shouldn't be a living wage? When FDR signed the National Industrial Recovery Act of 1933 into law, which instituted the federal minimum wage, he said that all workers deserve a living wage and that businesses that can't pay their workers have no right to exist. His words were forgotten quickly for a president who was so popular that he was elected to 4 terms. Winning feels better if there's more losers. Opinion. But I think there is a big element of people feeling like a higher minimum wage distracts from the hard work they put in to be in the roles, salaries they are now. The mentality is, why should they get paid X for flipping burgers when I put in so much hard work to get paid Y? It's not fair. I used to think that too, but realized that everyone should have access to a decent quality of life. People shouldn't not want to flip burgers because it's low pay. They should not want to do it because they think it would not be fulfilling for them. And that is not even getting into CEO pay, soaring profits, and the fact that all workers' wages should be higher across the board. Minimum wage is a complicated thing. It's not simply an issue of low or more money. It can also be the difference between no money, because no job, or low money. Generally, minimum wage should be low enough it doesn't destroy demand for workers. Figuring out what that number is can be tricky. At one time it was believed any legally mandated minimum wage was too high, that the market alone should be the determiner. More recently, it's generally accepted that there is a floor that doesn't hurt job demand, and in fact can actually stimulate hiring. https www.nytimes.com/2021/08/16/opinion/minimumwagejobs.html. But generally economists will agree that the number people select as a living wage will generally destroy some jobs, typically in the $20 per hour range, putting teenagers out of work, and driving up costs of places where lower-income people are likely to shop does not help low-income people. It's also worth noting, living wage is subjective and location-dependent. So often the argument isn't over living wage or not. It's what constitutes a living wage. What's a living wage? $25 an hour. Because there's no reasonable way to define living wage at a national level. The two arguments I usually hear are: 1. I'm a relatively important but also low-paying job, and I make $15 per hour. Why should someone flipping burgers make $15? These people don't think that a higher minimum wage will have any positive impact on anyone further up the economic chain. 2. Self-supporting adults don't work minimum wage jobs. Those are teenager jobs, and teenagers don't need to make a living wage. But giving them one just drives up the cost of living for everyone who actually is self-supporting. These people are the same people who think teenagers ought to be able to work their way through college. They think it would somehow devalue the work they do, work they view as more worthy. Why should some burger flipper make X amount? That's only a little less than I make. Quote, they don't realize that a higher minimum wage gives them more power to ask for higher pay too. I've found that most people who yap on that minimum wage doesn't need to be a living wage. Are they themselves making way above said minimum wages? Example: people making money telling lower classes they don't need to make as much or close to what they're making. Petty people. My mom: minimum wage jobs are for high school kids. Me: then why are they full-time? Mom mumbles something about bootstraps. The hourly rate hasn't kept up with the cost of living since the late 1960s. In fact, The earnings of a minimum wage worker with a family of 4 fall well below the poverty line. What's being defined as a living wage? Quote, live alone? Roommates? Food stamp eligibility? How do kids factor in? Selfish assholes who have no empathy or compassion for their fellow human beings. A few reasons. 1. Living wage is relative. More of a slogan than an actual thing. Relative to the industry and the location. And a one-size-fits-all approach is always a failure. 2. It reduces jobs, which ultimately reduces opportunity. 3. It stifles competition. You don't hurt the Walmarts of the world. You hurt the 3-person thrift shop that would like to hire someone to work an extra day so they can be open all week long and give people a day off. But that extra day of business isn't enough to cover the higher wage. And those that say that store just shouldn't exist are ironically complaining that those businesses aren't cutthroat capitalist enough. 4. Minimum wage only applies to roughly 1% of the workforce. And they usually need to accept it because of a glaring deficiency in their job skills or availability. And there are very few places where a person doesn't have the opportunity for quick promotion in that scenario. Contrary to the FDR narrative, he failed when it came to the Great Depression and he didn't build the middle class. The systematic carpet bombing of 80% of the industrialized world and the decades of rebuilding is what gave rise to the American middle class of the mid-20th century. Minimum wage shouldn't exist, period. Let alone be a living wage. It's a low-risk opportunity for someone with no skills to prove themselves. And no company lets good employees get away and survives for long. If they do, then the next place will pay you more as you've now shown a record of work skill. Even if it's just showing up every day. Which is a superpower compared to some people. Minimum wage goes up. Companies raise their prices. Therefore, minimum wage workers wind up with the same purchasing power they had before. Fixed income people drop down the scale a lot and middle income people get a little bit poorer. The only people helped are the rich. Americans are the most propagandized people on the planet. Because of inflation and economy, I would rather have 2 jobs under livable wage than not have any job at all. Because making that happen would reduce the profit of the ultra-wealthy. In their defense, a living wage is insanely high right now. If a living wage didn't have to cover predatory landlords, predatory healthcare, predatory car dealers and predatory every other industry, then perhaps it would be more realistic to expect it as a wage. Living wages should be paid, but also living should be more affordable. Millions of people every year in a financial emergency because they get sick is just not sustainable. There are some people who believe that wages should be so low that they should motivate people to make more of themselves and get better, higher paying jobs. They were conned into believing this by corporations which profit from paying their employees low wages and the politicians they own, usually Republicans.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. FamiliarCast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.